She drove fast. Her hands shook. Her 3 little girls sat quiet in the back. No one spoke. No one cried. The house behind them was still. Inside, their father was dying. The sky was gray. The road was long. She didn't look back. Her heart pounded. Her head felt heavy. Sirens weren't coming. At least not yet. She gripped the wheel and kept driving. She had to get away. But why did she shoot him? Why did a preacher's wife kill the man she loved? What secret was hiding behind that church door? This really happened. Every detail is real. Subscribe to Unbelievable True Story, because monsters don't live in movies, they live in small towns, and the next story might be your neighbor. A town of 4,500 people, where church bells ring louder than sirens, and the biggest headlines are about high school football games and church bake sales. Nestled in McNairy County, it's the kind of place where people wave at strangers and leave keys in the ignition. Everyone knows everyone. And everyone knew the Winklers. Matthew Winkler was the golden boy preacher. 31 years old, with a square jaw and a smile made for billboards. He came from a long line of Church of Christ ministers. His father preached. His grandfather too. It was in his blood. At the 4th Street Church of Christ, he stood at the pulpit every Sunday in his pressed slacks and starched shirts. He spoke about grace, humility, and the sanctity of marriage. His sermons were firm but loving. His words painted pictures of peace and harmony. He told stories about forgiveness, obedience, and how God intended the home to be a place of order. And in the front pew, every week without fail, sat Mary Winkler. She was the pastor's wife you'd imagine from a storybook. She wore pastel sweaters and long skirts. She kept her hair neat. She sang hymns in a whisper. And when someone needed help, meal deliveries, Sunday school, prayer chain, Mary was there. They had 3 daughters. Little girls with matching dresses and ribbons in their curls. They ran through the church hallways giggling, while the adults said things like, "That's the kind of family we all should be." Their home was straight out of a Southern Living magazine. White fence, red door, flower beds trimmed just so. Matthew mowed the lawn every Saturday. Mary waved to neighbors while watering the plants, but the Winklers' life wasn't a dream. It was a performance. Behind closed doors, Mary's voice was barely heard. She didn't talk back. She didn't complain. She didn't say what she needed. And Matthew? He was different at home. He expected perfection. Dinner hot, children quiet, the house spotless. And when it wasn't, his voice would rise. Mary tried harder. She apologized for things that weren't her fault. She believed, because her husband said so, that she was the problem. And the church? They only saw what they wanted to see, but every now and then, a crack showed. One day, Mary showed up to church with a black and blue mark on her arm. What happened? A friend whispered. Mary smiled, just barely. "Oh. I tripped over a toy," she said. "Silly me." And the friend let it go. Because surely, that kind of thing couldn't happen in that kind of house. Mary kept folding laundry. Kept cooking meals. Kept showing up with a smile. The house was silent. 3 little girls were still in pajamas. Shoes untied. Eyes wide, Mary moved quickly. A bag in her hand. A purse. The keys. She didn't speak. She didn't look back. Her heart thudded in her chest like thunder. Her head felt like it was full of water. Heavy. Slow, she buckled the girls into the car. One asked, "Where's Daddy?" Mary didn't answer. She couldn't. She turned the key. The engine started. Her hands trembled as they gripped the wheel. The sky was gray. The morning cold, and behind them, on the second floor of their tidy little home, Matthew Winkler was bleeding. Alone. Motionless in the bed where he once slept beside his wife. No one saw them leave. No one heard a scream. As the van pulled onto the main road, Mary blinked back tears. She told herself, "Just drive. Don't think. Don't stop. She didn't know what came next, she just knew she couldn't go back. The phone rang inside the Winkler home. No answer, it rang again. Still nothing. Eventually, a church member, concerned that the pastor had missed morning devotion, walked up to the door. He knocked. No footsteps. No reply. Just the hum of silence behind the walls. He turned the knob. Unlocked. Inside, everything looked normal. The air smelled like last night's supper. The TV was off. Shoes sat by the front door, but the hallway felt too quiet. Wrong, somehow, he walked upstairs, and then, he saw it, Matthew Winkler's body, face down in bed. His shirt stained deep red. A pool of blood soaked into the sheets. The man froze. Time seemed to stop, then, 911, within minutes, police swarmed the house. Yellow tape fluttered in the wind. Neighbors gathered in their yards, whispering, staring. The scene was eerie. No sign of forced entry. No broken glass. No fingerprints except the family's, just a missing wife. 3 missing children. And a dead preacher. The entire town gasped in unison. Mary? She would never. He was a man of God. He helped everyone. There must be some mistake. But evidence didn't lie. Matthew had been shot in the back with a 12-gauge shotgun. While lying in bed. While sleeping, it was personal. It was quiet. It was close. That night, Amber Alerts lit up phones across Tennessee. Pictures of the 3 little girls, Sarah, Brianna, and Patricia, flashed across TV screens. Police checked rest stops, gas stations, hotels. Mary's van was gone. The state line was watched. Helicopters scanned roads. Officers were told to look for a soft-spoken woman in a minivan with 3 small children. Mary Winkler, the preacher's wife, was now the most wanted woman in the South, and the question echoed across living rooms and newsrooms alike: why would a sweet, church-going woman shoot her husband and vanish? The answer came the next day. "400 miles away, a local officer saw the van parked awkwardly near a pier. Inside, 3 girls were quietly playing with stuffed animals. Mary sat behind the wheel, staring at the horizon. She didn't scream. Didn't try to run. When the officer asked her name, she simply said, Mary Winkler. When asked if she knew why she was being stopped, she whispered, yes. I shot my husband. At the police station, Mary sat with her hands in her lap. No tears. No panic. She told the officers where the gun was. Where she'd hidden it. She explained everything in a calm, almost dreamlike voice. Then she looked at the detective and said something that made him pause. I didn't mean to kill him. I just wanted him to stop yelling. What followed next shattered the town's image of Matthew Winkler. Mary told police about the years of pressure, pain, humiliation. She said Matthew controlled every part of their life. He handled all the money. She wasn't allowed to write checks without asking. If she did something wrong, even something small, he would scream. He'd belittle her in front of the children. She said he'd force her to do things in the bedroom that made her feel dirty. Things she didn't want. She told them how she stopped believing she had value. How she prayed for help. How she told no one, because she thought no one would believe her. She was the preacher's wife. She was supposed to be happy. Grateful. Silent. Then, she said, something inside her snapped. The night before, they argued. Loud. Harsh. He shouted. The girls cried. She said she tried to calm everyone down, but in her mind, one thought repeated, this will never stop. He'll never stop. In the early morning, while the house was still, she walked to the closet and retrieved the shotgun. She stood next to the bed. She said she didn't plan to shoot. She just wanted to scare him. I wanted to get his attention. News vans lined the street like a media blockade. Satellite dishes dotted the sky. Camera operators jostled for position. Reporters whispered into microphones, rehearsing their intros, brushing wind from their hair. One reporter adjusted her earpiece and turned to camera. It's the trial that's captured national attention. A pastor, dead. His wife, accused. Today, Mary Winkler faces a jury of her peers. Inside the courthouse, the air was thick, humid with anticipation, wooden pews filled to capacity. No one stirred. A woman sneezed, and even that earned side eyes. On one side, Matthew Winkler's family. Faces of stone. His father's jaw clenched. His mother wrung a handkerchief until her knuckles whitened. On the other, Mary Winkler, she entered slowly, flanked by her attorneys. She didn't meet anyone's eyes, she wore a dull beige sweater. It hung on her like it wasn't made for her. Her hands shook just slightly as she took her seat. A reporter near the back leaned over to a colleague and whispered, "That's her. That's the pastor's wife." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Mary kept her gaze low. The judge entered. All rose. Then the trial began. The lead prosecutor, a sharp-suited man with a controlled intensity, stepped forward. He unrolled a diagram of the Winkler's bedroom. The lines were clear: bed, closet, bloodstains. Then, a deputy brought out the shotgun. It made a hollow clunk as it hit the evidence table. The jury's eyes widened. Then came the photos. The prosecution didn't linger on them, but long enough for impact. Matthew's body, half covered by bed sheets, pale, motionless. A single wound. No signs of struggle. The prosecutor let silence hang in the air before he spoke. This was not an accident. This was execution. He paced, not rushed, just deliberate. Mary waited. She waited until Matthew was asleep. She walked to the closet, picked up the shotgun, and pulled the trigger without flinching. She didn't cry out. Didn't call for help. She didn't check for a pulse. Didn't try CPR. She didn't even stay. She fled. With her 3 children in tow. He let the words echo. She didn't call the police. She didn't call a friend. She didn't even leave a note. He walked toward the jury box, lowered his voice. What kind of mother does that? What kind of wife? He turned, pointed toward Mary, the kind who planned it. Mary's defense attorney stood. Older, seasoned. His voice calm, but carried the weight of what he was about to say. This case is not about murder. It's about survival. He let the room breathe. For years, Mary Winkler lived in a cage you couldn't see. No bars. No locks. Just control. He described Matthew as charismatic in public, but cruel in private. A man who controlled the money. Dictated her wardrobe. Monitored her phone calls. He belittled her. He mocked her appearance. Her weight. Her voice. Her parenting. He paused, and when she tried to leave, he made sure she knew she couldn't. He told the jury Mary had been isolated. Humiliated. Intimidated. He described financial schemes Matthew forced her into, loans taken out in her name, lies she had to help cover up. The shame she carried. Then his voice dropped lower. He coerced her sexually. Often. Against her will. The room went still. This wasn't a marriage. It was a sentence. She didn't plan to kill her husband. She planned to survive another day. And one morning, something snapped. He turned to the jury, but even then, she didn't know what she was doing. Not really. Not consciously. She was a mother. A frightened one. Who made a terrible decision. But not a calculated one. He paused. You'll hear about the gun. The bedroom. The aftermath. But if you really want to understand what happened, you'll have to hear from her. Then, he called her to the stand. Mary stood. Her knees buckled slightly as she approached the witness box. The clerk swore her in. She spoke softly, her voice cracked. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, but never broke down completely. She told them about the early days. The courtship. The church. The family dinners, then. How things changed, she said. He just made me feel like I was nothing. She talked about being told she was stupid. That no one else would want her. That she was lucky he stuck around. She described sex that wasn't really consensual. She described how he used scripture to silence her. He'd say, "Wives, submit to your husbands." And if I disagreed, it meant I didn't love God. Her voice trembled. She described the moment with the gun. Said she didn't even think it was loaded. That she wanted to scare him. "I just wanted it to stop," she said. "I didn't want him to die." She told the jury she blacked out for a moment. That when she saw his body, she panicked. "I didn't know what to do. I just grabbed the girls. Drove. I thought. Maybe if I could get far enough away, I could explain." The courtroom was silent except for the sound of someone crying in the back row. As Mary finished her testimony, the courtroom was no longer split into two sides. For a brief moment, everyone was just still. Processing. Deciding. Wondering. Do you believe this was a woman who lost control, or one who planned every move? The jury had heard everything: a beloved preacher dead, a grieving wife accused, a family shattered, and now, 12 strangers had to make the hardest decision of their lives. Was Mary Winkler a murderer, or a woman pushed to the edge? The jury had heard every word, seen every photograph, watched every tear. They now held the weight of a life in their hands. 12 people. A teacher. A truck driver. A stay-at-home mom. A veteran. They returned to the deliberation room, doors shut, phones off, tension thick in the air. Some believed Mary. Others didn't. Voices rose. Tempers flared. They argued over motive. Over trauma. Over what was real, and what was rehearsed. The law was clear: murder required intent, planning, purpose. But what if the plan was just to survive? After 8 hours, the door creaked open. They had made their decision. The courtroom fell silent. Mary stood, pale and shaking. Matthew's family gripped each other's hands. His parents stared ahead, eyes cold. The judge asked, "Have you reached a verdict?" The foreman stood. His voice didn't waver. "Yes, Your Honor. We find the defendant guilty of voluntary manslaughter." A collective gasp filled the room. Not murder. Not premeditated. The jury believed she didn't mean to kill him. They believed she was broken. Cornered. Desperate. Mary blinked hard. Tears ran down her cheeks. Behind her, her parents cried. But in the front row, Matthew's family wept in disbelief. "She shot him in the back," one relative whispered. "And she gets this?" The sentence? Just 210 days in jail. She had already spent 143 of them in custody while awaiting trial. That meant she'd serve only 67 more days. A little over 2 months. People were stunned. Local radio hosts lit up with fury. The town's coffee shops buzzed with outrage. If the roles were reversed, some said, if a husband shot his sleeping wife and claimed stress, would he walk free? But others argued this wasn't justice. It was mercy. After her release, Mary disappeared from public view. She moved far from Selmer. Changed her hairstyle. Got a nursing job. She kept her head down. Focused on her daughters. In a rare interview with Oprah, she finally spoke to the world. Her voice was soft. Her eyes heavy. "I still love him," she said. "I don't hate Matthew. I missed the good parts of him. But I couldn't live like that anymore." She said she didn't want to be famous. She just wanted peace. "All I ever wanted," she said, "was to be heard." Years passed, people moved on. But the case never really faded. To some, Mary Winkler is a murderer, a woman who pulled the trigger and walked away. To others, she's a survivor, a woman who lived in fear and finally broke. But one truth is certain: behind the white fences, behind the church doors, behind the family portraits, We never really know what's happening, not until it's too late. This is not fiction. Every detail is part of a real, documented case. A pastor, a wife, 3 children, 1 shotgun, and 1,000 unanswered questions. So now we ask you, what do you believe happened that night? Was it justice? Or a terrible mistake? Was Mary Winkler a victim, or a villain? Let us know in the comments. And if stories like this haunt you, if you believe truth is stranger than fiction, subscribe to Unbelievable True Story, because the next story, it might not happen in some faraway place, it might happen right next door.